Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Sunday. Is my light on? Yeah. It's summer, so you can't really see the red light. It's back there somewhere. Hope everybody's good. Let's see who is in the house right now. Mark C., new member. Welcome. Thank you so much, Mark. I just got your email too, Mark, so I'm going to reply to it once we're done with this. But yeah, welcome. Thank you so much for the support. And we got Big Joe. Joe, what's going on? How you doing? That video of your son's pretty funny. That's it so far. So let's get started. We got a relatively good show today. We got 6 or 7 of you on the waiting list for today, and then also we've got about a week waiting list. So I think there's about 7 or 8 more, and then after that we just keep going. So send me your emails face on down the line. Send me some description of what you need to work on. We'll definitely help you as best as we can. What's up, Chris? How we doing? Thanks for joining. Do we have you today, Chris? Or are you just stopping by? I think you're just stopping by. Okay. Actually, no. I think you're first up. This is actually from a video I'm going to be making about tilting. So disregard this video here. Let's jump right onto it. I think this is Chris right here. Maybe not. I think so. Okay. Let's check it out. Clear all this up. All right. I'm good to go. I'm a little bit off right now. Been gone for a couple weeks, so it takes a while to get back into the groove of things. Chris, is this you? I assume. Chris from Torrey. I recognize that facility over there. Loving all the videos on the channel. I attached another swing for tomorrow's night show. Can you take a look at it? It was at Torrey Pines a few weeks ago and had one of the best rounds of my life. Perfect. So if this is you, Chris, congratulations on the best round of your life. So no notes on what you're looking for. No notes on limitations. So we're just going to look at basically a cause and effect and give you my feedback on what I see. Face on would be really helpful too, Chris. So if you give me a face on, that'll be great. And if you do send me videos in the future, just if you can do a face on as well, it just really helps, teach about cause and effect, but also give you the best. It's a couple weeks waiting list, so I don't want you to, submit only one swing, and it limits what we're going to be talking about. So let's draw some quick little lines up here first. We don't have the power of editing, so you're going to have to watch me draw lines on every one of these videos. Let's take a look, split the difference. Okay, a little bit of a hill-based motion. Yeah, Chris, good. Chris, so do you live in San Diego, or are you just there for a vacation? So a little bit of disconnection, opening the club face, raising up out of posture, a little bit steep. So, Chris, I would imagine that your longer clubs, you either pull the golf ball or you potentially double cross every now and then, maybe rope hook it. But most of these are either pulls or soft fades to big slices. Is that correct? If I'm just assuming. A vacation. Okay, cool. Because we're actually at Mission Bay over the other side of that hill. I have an academy down there. That's why I recognize this facility. So, Chris, what do you want me to look at? Do you want me to just give you an idea of this golf swing? Do you want me to help you with just understanding how it works from this view? You let me know. How's everybody's week going? We got somebody on board that was over at Bethpage Black. Just a general overview. Okay, no problem. All right, Chris. So not knowing your history, not knowing, what you typically shoot, whenever I see a move like this, this is a typical move that I see for your weekend golfer. And I'm not saying you're a weekend golfer. I'm just saying this is a pretty typical move where we see the arms and hands really, rise up from that lower plane line, not quite get as deep enough as we would like. Working on fanning the club open relatively soon. So we see that club face is already, gone through that centerness checkpoint, and the hands aren't quite as close to the centerness checkpoint. So, if this was somebody that you and I'd be working with together, this is the first thing I would try and test to see if you can keep your hands and that club head kind of matching right about here. Because when you start to separate too soon, you start to lack depth, you start to lack your width. And, establishing width early right away can really help you ingrain some solid foundations in terms of turning and tilting. Because we can see when you start to get your hands involved and start to open up that club face, the weighting of the club face kind of pulls you along with that. So we start to see, this is another typical thing I do see, is that left shoulder raising out of posture, and that turn and tilt relationship is kind of sacrificed. Now, when you sacrifice that turn and tilt relationship, now you are going to have to compensate, and it just depends on how well you compensate. So I'm not saying this is bad or good. I'm just saying it's about compensations, because the best players in the world, tour players, they're the best compensators in the world. And we see right here, there's the evidence. Barney Purple showing you this left shoulder is going a little bit higher as a result. Now, a couple things can help with this is a driver swing, because if that left shoulder gets higher, it's okay, because we don't have to strike down on the golf ball. Here it's going to be tough for you to strike down on the golf ball, because you're tilting. The left shoulder points down. That means you're working steeper naturally, but your steepness comes from a different point. Your steepness comes from the arms disconnecting, always supported to the right side as you start to stand up. Now you're going to have to figure out a way to come steep, so you have to throw your hands back out to create some steepness to strike down on the golf ball. And that's where we see, this is definitely steeper, but it's not a natural steepness. Natural steepness, you can still get the club that steep, but if your shoulders can remain, perpendicular to that longer, now you're striking down with the whole body's moving down to strike the ball. This one, the body's moving up and your hands have to throw to strike down. So there's that disconnection, and that usually stems from this first part of the takeaway right there. You see the arms raise up and we start to roll and we start to lose depth and tilt. So if this was me and you, I would just say, hey, let's look at your flexibility. Maybe you're not flexible enough to make that turn, or maybe you just haven't been shown that turn and you are flexible, but it really comes from, this right hip, pulling back, almost like you're starting a lawnmower, where the right hip pulls this way, and that allows everything to move together, and the hands will really stay on that lower plane line longer, and that allows the room and the spacing and the momentum for the left shoulder to go along with that and feel like it's working down towards that lower plane line. So when you take that club back, you'll see in this position right away. I mean, you do a really good job of keeping it centered. So we're going to draw this in yellow. See how they're kind of tight, but they're not tight on that lower plane line. So we're disconnecting right away, and that's just shoulder tilt. So the shoulders are raising up, and then why did that zoom out? And then all of a sudden our hands go up with that shoulder tilt. So if you want to work on something at home, this might help you. It also might hurt you, so just be careful. I don't want to get an email in a couple of days say, man, you ruined my golf game. But think about that left shoulder working more down, so it's perpendicular to your spine angle. If you do suffer some flexibility issues, then you might have to look at setting up differently, because at the top of your swing, if this is your natural tilt at the top of your swing, then you might have to just change your setup so it's a little bit taller, maybe a little bit closer, so you don't have to compensate. But I'm don't take my word for this, but I'm pretty sure that loss of spine angle is from that rolling and just kind of picking up your hands, and then you get a little bit wonky up here, and that becomes timing oriented. So I'm sure you felt pretty good that day and your timing was pretty good, and you got away with it. And put it this way, I mean, I'm just looking at this because I have no notes, but I know plenty of people that play pretty solid golf with that swing if they're happy with the ball flight. The problem is your misses. How bad do those misses come? And if those misses are so bad that it goes into the bush over here there's no real trouble, but you can see the points, right? You don't want to have a miss where it's extreme both sides, because then you can't play that miss. Because if this is a miss, how can you plan for that miss? You can't plan for that miss, because you can't just aim over here and expect to just rope hook pull it, when if you double cross yourself, now you're over outside of this area. So you just want to look at anybody watching this. You want to look at any swing changes you make. Is it warranted, or is it just to look better? So that's my opinion. I hope that helped you at least. I'm glad you enjoyed Torrey. Or look at the weather. It's perfect. That's why there's that San Diego tax down there. Everything's so expensive, but I'm glad you had a good time. So hope that helps you. Let's see who's next here. All right. Let's let this play while we go over his notes. This is Connor. Connor, if you're on, let's see here. I parred that one, but I can work on depth and I have the flexibility. I need lessons. Yeah, Chris, I wouldn't say you need lessons. I'm not here to push people into lessons, because obviously lessons are expensive. I think what you need to do is just, work on stuff yourself, learn how to, look at your cause and effect, just the main checkpoints, and see if your body can accommodate that. If it can't, if you're physically incapable, or if you run into some pretty big issues, you've always got this channel to lean on, but you can definitely go for a tune-up lesson or find somebody in your neighborhood that, don't want to go and spend a lot of money. It depends on your goals, but obviously, I want to help you, people watching this and being a part of the channel, to not be so reliant on other people, because you can do it yourself. You just need to know what to look for. So hopefully that helps you. All right, so we have Connor. If you're on, let me know. If not, you'll be watching this in the after show. Connor from Kansas City, I believe. He's got a KC hat. Hope you're good. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you so much. Super interested in hearing your experience. Thank you so much. Let's get to his stuff. Where is it? Bit of an intro. I'm a scratch player, but I do not hit it consistently enough to be scratch. I have quite a lot of length, thankfully being athletic. 6'4", that definitely helps. But save lots of shots from making shots out of bad positions in short games. Okay, so it sounds like he misses it a little bit different. They can go from a couple under and level when I time everything perfectly to mid 80s. Okay, so we're probably going to look for something at impact to see what's affecting this. And that's the thing, it depends on your athletic ability. So if you have somebody that's athletic like this gentleman, he can get away with a lot more than somebody that isn't athletic. But let's take a look. And I can't move it again. Okay, yeah, I see it. Yeah. I'm wondering if your irons are more of an issue than your driver. Setup looks pretty solid, a little toe heavy. You kind of fall back to your heels right away. You see that little change there? So it might be fighting some weight distribution. Club does go below that lower plane line. It gets a little shut at the top. So now we're going to have to tilt a lot to hold that shut. Because if you turn more than you tilt, you're going to run into some issues. So we do see that increase of tilting and then kind of the holding off. Let's take a look at the face on real quick. Yeah, it's shut there. Yeah, so we do see that increase of tilt and hanging back. All right. This one's tough because you say, why isn't this not? I can't move it. So we're stuck at this view. Sorry about that. So I'm going to draw some tilting lines here real quick. And this goes into a video I'm making about tilting. So if it doesn't make sense now, wait a couple days. There's going to be a video on tilting. And I don't want to confuse you unless you've seen that video, because it can be a little confusing. I'm going to try the best to explain this without totally confusing everybody. Okay, so because of the left grip looks a little stronger, right grip looks maybe neutral to weaker, so they're trying to offset each other. But if you take a look at as we take that club from the top of the swing down to impact, right when the club is parallel to the ground here, we're going to take a look at your tilting. So we're going to draw the new tilt. Let's draw the new tilt in red. We're going to see that tilting is kicking up. Now, the problem with this is let's say your tilting stays the same. And bear with me while I try and explain this. The hand path will not change because that's the way your arms will extend from that tilting. The grounding relationship is also being tilted up because everything's being tilted too soon. Now, if we draw a 90-degree angle from that, we're going to see where those line up. So now that golf ball is outside the right shoulder relative to all the tilting that's going on. So in order for this to work, your spine angle would have to be further back. So in other words, your spine angle would have to be back this way and also slightly tilted this way to get that golf ball from being outside of your shoulder to being more inside of your shoulder, like over there. So there's another way you can do it. So that's number one. And that's why we see the four pressers, they either fall back to accommodate that tilt to get that golf ball relative to all those planes inside the right shoulder, or they level their tilt at this point. So another option would be for you to start to try to level the tilting, or in other words, hang on to this angle here a little longer. I know this is an exaggerated motion, but just so it can make sense. So you're trying to shift the same angle this way, one or two frames to level them out. So we're going to get our upper body to move this way. We're going to level our shoulders out. So let's say we can get down the club down to parallel again. So we see how the shoulders are tilted. So if we level this out slightly, so let's redraw those lines now. So if we get these shoulders to be slightly leveled out, that brings out the hand path to be slightly level and your ground path to be slightly level. So you can see it's still on an upward launch depending on where you strike that golf ball. But if we do the 90 degrees from that, so now all of a sudden, 90 degrees from there, see how it's shifted inside your right shoulder? So now you don't have to get the upper body to fall back to meet that, if that makes sense. So in other words, you're compensating for your forward press by falling back and adding tilt. And that's the problem with forward presses, because you can do that wonderfully with the driver. And that's why I want to know if you can probably hit the driver pretty good, but you might struggle with your consistency with your irons, because that club face gets that level plane in one tiny little frame. Now, if you can level your tilting out, things work a little differently. And let me pull up that video, because this might make more sense when I pull up that video I was working on. Where do I have those files? Give me a sec here. Hopefully this makes sense. Hey, what's up, Doc? Like the stream, y'all. Yep. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. You'll recently found your channel. Love the way you break down swings. Thank you so much, Eric. Love your support. Appreciate it. Let me see if I can find those tour players I'm looking at. Nope. Got to bear with me here. Okay. Here's Rory. Okay. So I want you to look at where Rory is when that club gets to parallel. So notice how this angle here, like it's a little bit more pronounced. As he carries that down angle, it's getting level as the club gets to parallel. So there's parallel. So now look at his shoulder tilt. There's his shoulder tilt. See, it's almost level, right? And this is what Rory does great, because it levels out his hand path, and it also levels out the ground in relation. So at this point, everything should be fairly level. And he has a forward press as well. He's a pretty big forward press. But as you level the tilt out, you can get the center of your body to move with that level ahead of the golf ball. And if you take a look at right angle from that golf ball, look how close it is to the spine. And that's right angle to his tilting. Where if you take a look at what the previous gentleman did, increasing tilting gets everything out of whack. And now you've got to just hold on for dear life with your wrists and just time that release. And when you're holding things off with a downward trajectory with an iron, becomes a challenge with the driver, not so much. But if you take a look at, that's where his centerness is, right? That's Rory's centerness. I'm gonna draw a little X there. Let's zoom in on this one. But let's go back to his starting position and look how far back his centerness is here. So there's the centerness. So look how much it shifted forward, and he leveled things out. So this is the second way to change the forward press. And this is the way that's really hard to do. So look how much the center would move, but he could only move it there by keeping his shoulders more level. You can't move it there by adding tilt, because you're going to run straight to the ground. So this is the correct way, the tour way, to change that forward press. And if you don't know what that forward press is, there's that forward press related to his shoulders. Look how much forward press he has. That's a little bit exaggerated there, but there's the forward press. So this is the gapping that he has to work with. So he makes up that forward press by getting the centerness to that line, but he levels his shoulders out. Where the gentleman we just saw doesn't level his shoulders out. He tilts because he's making up for it the other way. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of tilters, because unless you're really gifted, you can get away with it, but it's hard, specifically if you're a weekend golfer that only gets out, once every week, once every 2 weeks, maybe hits a golf, range session once a week. You can't work with that. You're going to go through these motions where it's just timing oriented. You're going to fool yourself, because you're going to get out there and have your timing right. And then all of a sudden, when your timing's right, you say to yourself, I've got this. It's ingrained. I've got it. But no, you're just getting away with it for that day. And then you show up the next day or the next week and you can't hit it anywhere. Because you say, I was playing so great last week. What happened? Well, you get too much tilt, and that puts too much pressure on your hands to time in that small little zone, where somebody like Rory has figured this out, and he's leveled things out longer so he can get that weighting ahead and strike down correctly to carry that forward press. So hopefully that makes more sense. It's going to be in a video this week if that didn't make sense. So your setup on that swing looks pretty good. I wouldn't change that. I would definitely start to look at how do you get those shoulders to be more level. But again, this is going to be tough for you, because being a scratch golfer with the motions that you have already, if you change something so dramatic as leveling your shoulder tilts, your whole swing's going to fall apart. So, you got to take this with a grain of salt and just, this is what I see. But everything down to your grip affects everything. So not only would you have to change your leveling out, you'd have to change your weight distribution, you have to change how you hinge the club, you have to change how you start the grip, you have to change how your setup. So this is a huge thing for you to think about. But if you need somebody to work with, and let me know in your area where you are, I can try and help somebody. I can look at PGA, the directory, and see if I know somebody in your neighborhood. But that's all I see. So let me know if that helps you, Chris. Let's see. Joe, you're going to be up after. I guess you're up now. Joe. All right, Joe, here we go. Let's take a look. Nobody's new yet. Okay, Joe, are you on? I thought I saw Joe here somewhere. Was Joe there? Yeah, Joe's here. All right, Joe. So this is like a checkup. Joe submitted his swing, I want to say like 5 months ago. And we're just doing a little checkup for Joe to see if everything's going good. I know, Joe, you sent me a couple of emails about you might be deciding to, be okay with losing some shoulder tilt, excuse me, some spine angle at impact, just to help you come more from the inside. Just let me know if that's still the case while I break this down. Joe had an issue for a while of maintaining his back brace line and maintaining his posture through impact. We'd start to lose our posture, go into the golf ball. It would, force his club to come from different angles, and he'd have to rely a lot on his hands and arms. So we're just going to check things out and see how things are for Joe. I just erased that. All right, let's try it again. You know why? It's because you're lefty, Joe. It throws my mind off. Work in progress. I hear you, Joe. Okay, so split the difference. And if you guys, when you do send me videos, if you could try your very best to get it on the foot line. So this video is kind of in between here. The more you can get it to your foot line, the better it is, because things match up a little bit easier. We can make it work here, but sometimes the camera angles can really throw things off, because I don't think that Joe is this toe heavy, but that camera angle. Okay, yo, so there's that loss of shoulder tilt. Looks good though, Joe. Joe, it looks much better. You have any feedback from me, Joe, while we got you here? Are these swings from members of your website or just anyone? Anyone, Eric. This is like a free-for-all. So I just wanted to create a space where you can send me your videos. There's no fee, no paywall, nothing. Just send it to me. I'd say there's about right now 1 to 2 week waiting period. So the sooner you get it in, the sooner you go on the list. And then I give priority to like brand new students or brand new people. So if somebody's never sent a video and then somebody sends me like a follow-up video, I want to make sure the brand new person gets treated correctly. And then we go to the person that sends a follow-up. So I'll get to him eventually, but just send it to me. info@landgolfacademy.com, face on down the line. Yep, anyone can send a swing. Thanks, Doc. So Joe, let me know how things are going, because right now it looks pretty good other than that slight shoulder tilt loss. But I know that we talked about this, about you not kind of maintaining your posture, because that puts a little bit of pressure on your back. Yeah. It's okay, Joe. I think what you're doing is fine, because you get to that secondary plane line, you lose a tiny bit, but you're not losing much. You take a look at the shoulder tilting. It's not like it's, incredibly bad. There would be perpendicular. So it's not like we're completely coming out of our posture. And this could, like it said, this can help you get that left shoulder down sooner, because it's losing tilt. So it helps you come from more from the inside. So that left shoulder does get down. It's not like you're raising up and then standing up again. So you reroute accordingly. That club does fall to that lower plane line pretty quick. There's parallel to that lower plane line. So it's falling, at least it's favoring the lower plane line. Is it steeper? Yeah, because you can see your setup is a little taller. It's really hard to be flat when you have a tall setup with an iron, because if you're tall with an iron, how are you going to get shallow and still swing down? So I think this is still pretty good. And your back brace line here, you still stay on that back brace line. Your weighting's a lot better. You're not falling to your toes or your heels, so you can see there's definitely better weight distribution. You're not firing too soon. Now let's take a look at your shoulder tilt relationship real quick. So let's go back a couple frames after impact, right there. So here, we're going to get as close as we can. 60. Let's go to the top. This will probably be less than it should be, but oh yeah, I mean, look at that amount. And even if we go past to here, even there, yeah, you're still getting the 20, 25 degrees, Joe. So it looks fine. I think it's a good work in progress, like you said. I wouldn't get too obsessed with the tilting for you, Joe. I think it's working. It's functional. That's the key. You know, it doesn't have to look pretty, Joe. And this, I'm not saying this looks ugly, but the problem is you can get too caught up on lines, and when you get too caught up on lines, you know, look at the best in the world. Jack Nicklaus doesn't hit these lines. Tiger doesn't really hit these lines. So, you know, these lines are only built for you to recognize cause and effect, and are you compensating correctly? And I see this as a good compensation. The compensations you're making support your backswing, and that's all this is. You know, we're not drawing these lines to say you've got to hit these lines. We're drawing these lines to show you, okay, this is where you veer off, and when you veer off, your body's going to have two options. It can compensate correctly, or it can not compensate correctly. And where do you recognize things not compensating correctly? But you do a good job, Joe. Ugly Line Joe. No. Come on, Joe. You need a better nickname than that. You're like the baseball king, Joe. We're going to call you Baseball Joe. That's your new nickname. Joe, I think it's looking good, man. So keep doing it. Keep working at it. Send me the emails every now and then if you need me to check up on you. Your setup looks fine, too. You're not open or closed. You know, everything looks fine. Face on, Joe. If you can, give me a face on just so I can make sure that ball position and you're tilting, how that's looking. But from this down the line, it looks fine. No problem, Joe. Anytime, man. Let's see who is next. We got Ghost 8. I don't know if Ghost is in or not, but Ghost is another revisit. And this is a 7-wood, I believe he said. Now, Ghost, if you have never seen Ghost before, he's a big man. I think he's 6'6", 6'7". So he definitely has some issues with, you know, bending over and maintaining the posture. I don't think he's had custom clubs, although he might benefit from getting a little bit longer. And so we see more of a bent over posture, more of a toe-based posture because he's so tall. And typically when you are tall, you have issues with weight distribution, with staying balanced because you're so tall. I read somewhere, I can't remember where it was, that the perfect height for a golfer is 5'7". So if you're 5'7", you're right there, which kind of explains. I mean, look at Rory. Where's Rory? 5'7". Ben Hogan, 5'7". So there is some merit to being on the shorter side. Things are closer to the ground. You don't have to worry about losing balance as much. Arm ratio does play a big difference. But let's just break down his swing real quick. This is a checkup just to see what's going on here. So we do see that big forward bend over. And when we start to get a forward bend over this much with a wood, you know, we're not really trying to hit down with a wood as much. Hybrid, yeah, you can hit down more. But with the wood, this is going to be challenging. And you can see what's occurring here. This is almost getting close to that like 90-degree area. And that's tough because it's going to be really hard for him to maintain any sort of tilting relationship. I mean, his shoulders would have to be like tilting like that. And it's 6'7", 6'6", to get those tilting like this. That's really, really hard. What did you say, these? I'm 5'7", I suck. Hey, come on, man. Well, you know what? You might think you suck, but 5'7", at least you got the frame, right? You're halfway there. And I'm 5'11". Maybe if I was 5'7", you'd be analyzing me, but no. So at least you're halfway there. I'll trade you some height. So it's going to be really hard for me to hold that tilting relationship because, you know, think about trying to get your left shoulder down that much with a wood. So we're probably going to see some loss of posture here. And immediately we get, oh, he did it. So he stayed pretty good in terms of the height. But if you take a look at that shoulders, the shoulders definitely start to raise up. So it's, you know, when they raise up, what happens to the arms? The arms get to that secondary plane line, not high enough. So the secondary plane line, let's draw that real quick in Barney. So there's the secondary plane line. It's usually run parallel to the lower plane line. So we see loss of tilting, hands get lower. And then does he reroute? That's the thing. Does he reroute back around or does he slot it? And there's the reroute back around. So it's pretty good. He slots it from there, but it's instead of working down, it's working steeper. and we start to lose our posture right there. So as we come into impact, we still see the raising versus where it started. So look at that difference. Um, Ghost, if you're watching this, you're probably not on right now, but you really gotta like go get fitted. I think that's your alternative because you shouldn't be standing this toe heavy. We can't see his arch of his heels, but his arch of the heels are probably right there. And that's look how toe heavy that is. That's his starting plane. That's where everything is. I mean, look how much of that weighting is stuck on his toes. That's really hard to maintain your posture as he strikes it. You see the knees are kicking in to support that centeredness. So if we start from here, let's draw a yellow line. This is basically the centeredness of his swing. So the knees are going to try and find that centeredness to support that so he doesn't fall over. And by doing that, he crashes into the golf ball and stands up. So and I know he gets away with it because he's an athlete. I think he's a former NBA guy, or not NBA, basketball guy. I don't know what level he got to, but so he's an athlete. You see, he kind of struggles with his weighting, but he finds a way to do it. Now, I think to take him to the next level to help him is definitely get some longer clubs. Go get fitted. Go get fitted by somebody that knows how to fit. That's not just going to throw you newest things because they get commission on it. I was. Hey, Brian, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you. Brian Wolf just joined. Appreciate that, Brian. I used to work at Golf Tech maybe like 20 years ago, and they were partnered up with, I believe, Golfsmith. I think they're still in the Golfsmiths. And every morning before they would open the store, we'd be inside, and we weren't part of that, but we were on a separate entity. They would have these meetings, like these sales of the day, and they would tell their guys, even the fitting guys, hey, today, we got too much of this in inventory. So you guys are going to get bonuses if you push this stuff out. So obviously when they're giving out these fittings, they're going to give out the ones that they get bonuses on. You want to stay away. I'm not saying they do that now. They could have changed, and hopefully they have changed. So if Golfsmiths, you're watching, don't sue me. But that's basically what it's like in those big box stores. You want to go to somebody that's in it for you. So those are pretty hard to find, but they're out there. So 8, I hope that helps you. It still looks the same since the last time we did it, and this is the same things that I've been seeing. So you can try to change your posture so you stand a little bit taller and closer, but those clubs are going to limit that. So I think it's a combination of getting fitted correctly and then making those changes so you're standing closer and taller to help you with your height, so you're not fighting that tilt-turn relationship. So hope that helps you. All right, next up, this is Ross. Now, Ross, when I first saw this, I thought this was in Corona because that looks like the Corona Mountains, but you're actually all the way in New Zealand, so I wasn't even close. 38, have played golf much more often in the last 10 years. In my youth, I only played once or twice. My major sports are cricket and field hockey. Field hockey in particular influenced my swing for many years, as I believe I'm arm heavy and even further wrist dominance. I'm pretty confident with my hand-eye coordination from lifetime of cricket and hockey. So let's see. Both shots in the video found the fairway, which I can't say is always the case, but the distance was roughly 230 meters, and that's about, 255 yards. At the time making this videos, I had recently endeavored to bring the ball positions back some as I was fading slicing significantly from a ball further forward. Yes, so if you are suffering from a slice or a push, or this constant rights, that these weak shots, look at your ball position. If it's too far forward, that means your path will always be left, because as you swing through, that club is working left to get to that golf ball, unless you get this exaggerated tilt to hold this out, but then you're going to tilt and move forward anyway, which will give you a steeper motion. It's going to be one of these. So ball position, it's backwards. When I was first got into the instruction, it was believed that ball position left would give you a draw, ball position right would give you a fade, but it's backwards now. So that's what education does. Doc, appreciate that, brother. After Ross is going to be Rachel, guys. Don't worry. Yes, we need that Friends song. Thank you, Doc. I appreciate it, man. So let's take a look at this. He says, I can easily miss with hooks or blocks if my timing isn't right. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's take a look at the down the line first. Oh, yeah, I see that. pretty deep inside out. Yeah. Okay. I assume this is a straight on. That T line, this T line's messing with my perceptions, but I'm pretty sure this is straight on. So there's the tilt. There's the center of the tilt, but his hands are back of the center. So he's almost got a back press relative to his tilting, but the fore press relative to his spine. So we're just a little bit all kind of misaligned. Now, misalignment like this, basically, you're trying to get all those lines together at impact, right? So you can see how much manipulation has to occur here. The body has to do a bunch of stuff to get those lines to meet up in the middle. So this is where some issues could arise. We see the weight distribution, but we're stuck. We don't really, we're getting the movement, but we're not turning and tilting accordingly. So at the top of your swing, we see right there. Let's zoom in if we can. Hopefully it'll let me pan up and down. So we see the upper body, leaning the wrong way. So it's leaning in Barney purple. So there's the spine. We see a lot of shoulder turn, but it's leaning like down. So he's going to have to, figure out a way to contour out of that. So this is like an iron swing. And then as we come on down, we're trying to change our shifting so our spine falls back. So now we're facing more up, right? So we see that compensation occur. And right as we strike it, we see there's the tilting. Hands have caught up to the tilting. And then there's that forward press carried over. But that's one frame after we strike it. Let's back it up. So this is before we strike it. So yeah, he's trying to make up all these lines. So he makes them up pretty good, but at the mercy of the weighting moving the other way. So it starts almost left side, falls back to try and get those tilting in line with the hands, with the pour. I hate saying the word pour, but the setup that I wouldn't recommend. It's a lot of compensations occurring, and the weighting's moving the wrong way. So you see the lead foot is like falling back. So there's just a lot of weight stuck, a lot of power stuck back here to compensate that setup. And as a result, like he said, he feels like his hands get involved. I mean, to get these lines to square up, this club head has to find a way to match up that tilting within those couple of frames, and they're still way off. They're disconnected so much off the right side. So if we redraw his triangles here, there's his tilting. The hands should be a little bit closer, maybe halfway to that. So they're behind the game. And there goes the hands, and then they come right over. So yes, I can see this as a very, very timing-oriented swing, and a lot of athleticism is involved in this swing. So it explains why he's an athlete. He's played many sports. He's able to capitalize on his athletic feel. But let's take a look here. See from this side what the compensations are. So right away, if this was my student, we'd be talking about, okay, we need to do a setup change and an in-swing change at the same time. I don't think a setup change will change much because there's just a lot of compensations that occur. Compensations are just bad habits. They just take a long time to go away. If they're bad compensations, I should say that, because man, what's going on? Forgive me. See, I'm away for 2 weeks and I can't even hit a button. There we go. All right. So there's the left arch. There's the right arch. So it is slightly toe. Yeah, isn't quite connected here. So club head is moving a little too fast. So it's going to pull those hands back to the right side. So we're going to get flatter. We lose our tilting too, which is okay for a driver. So it's not too bad, but you can see that pulling of the hands. It gets flatter. To compensate that, we cross the line. And that's not necessarily crossing the line. It's the club head getting above the hands. And remember what we saw from the video a couple of days ago, where the change where she made, where we raise our hands, and that's going to open up the club face versus closing the club face. So I assume, it's hard to see, but I assume that club face is relatively in a closed position. So we have to now look how steep we are right there. We do good job of getting it there, but watch this next frame. That club's going to veer below that lower plane line pretty quickly. And now it's below. So, it's okay to be below because you don't want to, this is where you're striking up, but your body has to compensate that as well. If it's below with the hands and the upper body's working the other way, now we're getting kind of, I hate shallow, I hate that word, but now we're getting a shallow motion, but our body's not with that shallow motion. It's doing its own thing. So this is a compensation. The body's going one way, the hands are going the other way to try and meet the middle. And this is where we get those hands to really flick through and time correctly. Look at that. He hit it right down the middle. So this can be very frustrating for him because it is very timing oriented. There is a lot of power that is lost. And we see he's only able to hit it 255. You know, with his athletic motion, with his build, you can see he's very athletic, very strong. Look at his legs. I mean, he should be able to use those big calves, like Phil Mickelson said, right? It's all in the calves. But we see from here to here, knees kind of kick underneath to help him get below plane. Yeah, this is a big change in terms of setup. So if this was me and you, we'd be working on setup. We'd be working. Number one is get you in a more neutral setup. Your setup from the face on down the line looks decent. But from face on, assuming this is directly straight on, I believe it is, just because this line is still messing with my perception. But this is where we put that ball position slightly more up. And I know you said you had it more up, but as long as things are working together. So, you know, if you like that shoulder tilt, that's okay. Keep those hands out in front with that shoulder tilt, though. So you carry a slight forward press if that's necessary. But then from this position at the top of your swing, you know, we don't need to slide over. And I think what's causing this slide is that ball position wants to be off your left side. So by you sliding the centeredness, you're shifting that ball position further left by kicking your center back. But you're doing it a little inefficiently, like your hips are bumping out. And now you're stacking the weight a little bit incorrect. So maybe instead of that first move, maybe just take that right hip and feel like it's going closer this way. So it's just immediately turning. And that will keep that relationship the same. But then at the top of your swing, you won't have this like forward lean that's leaning the wrong way. So it's straightening out. If it even goes further back, now your weight's kicking down. So you're essentially swinging down like an iron. At the top of your driver swing, the upper body should be matching where you started. So it should be here. So we shouldn't see any of this part of your body at all. And that should just come from you getting those hips to turn right away. And when you turn with those hips, now you're in this position instead of like that. And this is just from the hips jutting out. Now you have to unjut them and you fall back and then you're stuck on this foot. And I hope unjut is a word. And if it's not a word, it's a word now. Let's see here. I had great success at the end of my round yesterday, but not grounding the club head and just hovering over it. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. I think I don't do it as much anymore, but there was a time when I played golf. For some reason, when I would hit the golf ball pure, I would hover the club head like 2 or 3 inches above the golf ball, and it would just set me correctly. So, hey, man, if it's working, do it. You know, I wouldn't question anything that works. You know, if it works one day and it doesn't work the next day, that's like, okay, well, maybe I need to question why. But I'd say still do it until it doesn't work anymore. And then look at the reason why it doesn't work anymore. If you have a face on down the line swing of when it wasn't hovering and a face on down the line swing of when it was hovering, send it to me because then I can help you kind of see why that works. I think that's the best way to do this without me just kind of throwing out some random ideas. All right, so I hope that helps you, Ross. Next up, let's see who's next. Next up, we have Axel. Let's zoom in on Axel. Axel just sent me a face on, so we'll have to make do with what we got here. And all right, Axel, no notes. So we have free reign to do what we want with this swing. All right. Same thing here with the tilting I see already. Okay. So let's go to the beginning. I know this is probably a wedge. Right? So we were trying to set up a little bit differently. But we're going to draw this just to see if it makes sense to you here as well. So we got the tilting. The center of that tilt, perpendicular. And now we've got our hands back pressing the center. And we have our forward pressing of the shaft. So we've got a pretty big spacing to make up. And remember, sequencing increases your tilt naturally, and it increases your forward press. Naturally, I understand that we need some forward press with a iron, all that stuff. But if you take a look at relative to where the ball position is, hopefully this is still vertical. No, it's so weird. It goes vertical and it does horizontal. So there's the ball position. So the ball position is not quite centered to him. So it's a back ball position. Hey, Chris, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. You're welcome. Just let me know how it goes for you. That's my son's name. Who? Axel? Axel's your son's name? You're probably like, what? He knows my son? Yeah, I'm looking at you from here with binoculars. So we have a ball position that's a little bit too far back. Our tilting is pressing forward. We got our hands back pressing to that tilt. So again, we're going to have to make up and figure out a way to line things up. And let's take a look at this in slow motion. So we get that weight distribution right. So we see a little bit of that bumping, and that bumping helps align that golf ball. So now that golf ball shifts to the center of him. So we've got that taken care of. Now, how do we carry over that forward press? Do we shift back over? We shift back over, not as much as we bump forward, but we still have to let go of that angle. So we see this angle letting go a little bit too soon. We're not able to quite carry it. And that has to do with that forward press and also the tilting, again, relative to everything. So there's a way you can fix this is, we don't have to bump as much, because if we move that ball position more in the center, so it's not, back, we can just turn from that position. And when we just turn, we don't have to worry about shifting forward either. So more of a turn, and the shoulders, again, if we're sorry if I'm all over the place, but if we shift this way, we have to shift this way, right? But if you shift this way and start tilting, you're bumping your hip and you can't quite get the center over where you need to be, but you can if you level out. So there's this where you can't tilt and get over because things are compressing on the right side, but you want to delay that compression while your centeredness gets ahead of the golf ball and then drive through. But if you compress too soon, it's going to stall out your motion this way, and now you're going to be losing the angle because the golf ball doesn't quite line up correctly and your tilting is too much for that motion. If that makes sense to you, I hope it does make sense to you. But if it doesn't, you got to watch the video I'm trying to make for this week, because it explains this. So in other words, if we get to here, let's assume that the golf ball position now is here. We've moved it up. No, it doesn't seem like much, but it's one golf ball over. When we're here, at least we've got some fairly level shoulders to work with. Right? That club is pretty close to parallel here, and we see the shoulders are in a slight tilt. That's fine. And our hand path will be a slight tilt. That's fine. And that's going to relate everything together. Now, if we draw that 90-degree angle again from the golf ball straight up, we can see at least 90 degrees is just on his right side. But if it's 90 degrees from the golf ball here, where is it now? It's inside his right shoulder. Remember, Rory, everything was closer. The closer it gets to this line here, that means you're using your weight distribution correct. I'm talking about the up and down line. So more like here, the golf ball line. So as long as you can get your centeredness a little bit closer to that, now you're connecting to the golf ball on the ground, and your tilting is relative to the ground because we're level things out. The moment you get too tilty and you have not made up for that correctly, that's where you have the contact issues. So things just look a little disconnected here. Our hands aren't quite connected enough. So without that down the line, it's hard to see where the disconnection occurs. And what we're looking at is this angle here, is the relationship between the tilting and the centeredness. So if that's his tilt, there's the center of that tilt. Look how far the hands are away from that. They should probably be here already. So everything's just about a golf ball away. And where does that stem from? A golf ball here. So if you just move the golf ball there and not have sliding, you can just kind of work your way around that golf ball. The golf ball is not going to move. So why should you move all over the place? Because the more you move, the more you have to bring in compensations, and the more timing is involved. Because look at those hands. They go from here to whoop. They just fire through. Now his body's doing a really good job. So from here to here, he's got a really good swing. I just think it's a little bit too timing oriented. There could be some heavy shots, some thin shots, and as well with club face related to your path issues, but it's hard to tell without that face on. So make sure if you do send me videos, to send me down the line too, along with the face on. So Axel, hope that helps you. Next up, let's take a look. Let's zoom on in. All right. This is Carl, Hawaiian shirt. That's Carl. I assume he's from Hawaii. I don't have any notes, Carl. So if you're on, I wish I could have a man bun. Hey, you know what? I used to have a man. Actually, I do. I don't have a man bun, but I have it in. I went to the pool right now, but I had it in a French braid all the way down the back. So I'm working on a man bun. I'm actually going to get a perm next. I'm going to just let it grow and then just perm it. So one video, you're going to see me just a massive perm mohawk, and that's going to be my look. So Joe, there's hope. I don't know if that link worked, Coach. Let me know. Matthew, can you let me know what link? Sorry, I don't know what link you're talking about. So there's no notes for Carl, so I'm just assuming we get to have free reign to see what this is about. Let's take a look. Just reminds me of Magnum PI. I don't know why. I think he's Tom Selleck. Is this Tom Selleck? All right, got a big sway going on here. Let's take a look at that setup. Okay, a lot of back pressing, level shoulders with the driver is going to be tough. And we get some increase of angle. Okay, very body-driven motion. Almost too much body and not letting the hands, we see that loss of the look how quick he loses that angle. So he's almost doing what you should be doing with an iron, but he's doing it with a driver. So he's leveling out the shoulders a little too soon, because now that centerness of the circle is going to make contact here. At this point, the shoulder should be a little bit more kicked up to bring that centerness out in front of the golf ball so you can carry some forward press. It's all about shifting your tilting correctly, because the tilting directly controls the center of your circle. And if you shift the center, because our arms are connected to, we have equal arms and they're going to ground out basically where our tilting is. So that tilting affects where the ball wants to ground and where all the power is at that point. And if it's not in the right position, let's say you don't have enough tilt and your centerness is at the golf ball, but for a driver, you want it to be slightly ahead of the golf ball because you want to launch it. Now you're going to have to try and do something from this, 2 frames from here to impact. And it's all going to be hands and arms and just trying to, muscle the ball or try and throw your hands to get some loft, because we've de-lofted the club by not getting enough tilt. And that's the number one thing that when I fit students, they just don't have enough loft on the driver. And it could be their swing mechanics or the speed. But most of my students that need more loft typically fall back to try and add loft because they're doing something in the golf swing. So if you don't want to change your swing, obviously get more loft. It might help you. Ball position can make a big difference. But I just see the tilting is not quite correct. This starting position, I'm a huge fan of setup. We look at setup, and setup is what you give your body to use. So if we look at the tilting, so we have pretty level-ish tilting. Our hands are doing a good job of staying level to that tilting, but look at the bottom of the circle. It's behind the golf ball. So if you just adjust this tilting slightly and keep things relative, now your hands and the club head will be at least matching there to, here's your circle. So if the circle is there, at least now you're presetting yourself to want to strike up. And if you sequence naturally where you bump that left hip, the right shoulder will tilt down as a result, and that will increase your tilt even more. And that's where the forward press happens. The things work together for that forward press. So I think this just a simple setup change might free you up some. And what do we do from that? So we get that lateral slide. So this lateral slide could be to help get that golf ball even more out in front. So there's a centerness here. As we get that lateral slide, we see so much slide going on here. So now at least the golf ball wants to promote, a move where you can swing it up. But because we've slid over, we're trying to turn from there, but we still have to slide back. And that sliding back levels out your shoulders. And now you're digging into the ground. And then your hands have to go to try and save it and add some loft. So I just think a lot of this stems from your setup. I think if you can get that setup to be a little bit more favored for a driver. So if you want to go on YouTube, just type in driver setups. There's going to be many of them. If you want to find one where, I talk about setups. I haven't done a setup video on driver. I should actually do that for you. So scratch that. I'm going to make one for you this week on driver setups. I might go to the range and talk about driver setups, the different types of driver setups that you can do depending on your body. From this side, you can definitely see some aiming issues. So our feet are going here. Shoulders are kind of pointing left of that. Knees are obviously they're going to be closer to the feet, so they're going to favor that right side, but the hips are pointing this way. We see the right forearm is sticking above the left forearm, so this could start to mess with your planes. Let's see what happens to your plane from here. No, you did a pretty good job of counteracting that. So we see that turn right away. So good job turning. Very flat. And that could be because of the lack of tilting at the start. Yeah, so we have a very flat motion. Yeah, this is a challenging one. It's a lot of rotation, which is good. So you might want to look at like a rotation rotation method to help you. But you definitely want to, free your arms up a little bit. It just looks like so much body is trying to hit this golf ball that we lose the whip of our hands. The hands are like the tail on the dog. They just move based on the body. But your hands are just kind of going with the tail wagon. So it just doesn't look quite as effective as it needs to be. I think it all starts in your setup though. But here's your planes just to take a look. You see that club gets pretty far below. And as a result, you do a really pretty good job though of keeping your shoulders relative. You have a lot of turn. You don't need that much turn. Look how low your hands are. And then we're trying to get that club up above, which is a little challenging to do. And the compensations from there, you get on plane here, but that club's probably going to fall below plane again. And then it's going to come back above plane. And then look, there's like a hold off of a release. So you're not really doing anything with the hands. They're just kind of going with. There's no like punch. If you see somebody punch, they don't just punch like this. And you don't see this. You see here and then boom. That last piece of the punch is bam, like throwing a ball. You don't see somebody throwing a ball like this. They throw and boom, they release it. Joe knows all about that. So I think a setup will definitely help you. Great idea in the driver setup. Yeah, I think I need to do one. I've talked about it so much, and we do the lines and we go over it. But I think I need to just do a video only for driver setup on how certain driver setups work and don't work, depending on what you want to do. There's days where I set up a lot of tilt. There's days where I set up no tilt, maybe on purpose, maybe not. And I'm wondering why I'm blasting them and having cans pull on the right side because I'm not setting up enough tilt. I'm setting up like an iron, and I can't get the tilting right, and it leaves me late all the time. So I think that's definitely going to help you. So Carl, I hope that helps you. I think you need to look at your setup and then just look at getting your arms more involved. It's okay for the arms to get up to that secondary plane line, to have some room to move up and down. If they stay low all the time, they're not really moving up and down to get that wrist to hinge correctly. But let me know in an email. But that's it. That's the show for today. Thank you so much for everybody stop by. Thanks for all the donations for the new subs. I really appreciate that. If you have any videos, send it to me. info@liongolfacademy.com. Face on down the line. I'm still waiting for yours, Doc. You got your spot over here. So in order to have that spot, you got to send at least one video every 5 years. And I think, we're coming up on the 3.5-year mark, and I've seen one video. So you got like 1.5 years left to give me the other video. But other than that, we got 6 or 7 lined up for next week. Send me more emails. You go in the pipeline, and we're going to be all caught up. So hope that helps you. I'll see you next time. Fairways and greens.